Hello, second favorite mum. I call out, greeting Altrix cheerfully. The twisty-toothed woman turns to me and glowers, though I can tell there's a jolt of joy in it. You cheeky little shit, she greets me back. Ooh, that sounds like Sano. I decide. Hi Sano. I'm a cheeky little princess now, actually. So it would seem, my original birth mother agrees, looking me up and down. The new species seems to agree with you. I chuckle with mild embarrassment, scratching the chitin of my cheek. Yeah. I like it. You humans are way too squishy. Sana laughs at that, opening her arms wide. May we hug you, princess? She says, putting her usual sardonic twist on my title, of all things. Most people I might get mad at for doing so, but it doesn't feel disrespectful coming from her. I don't intend to make Altrix use my title anyway. Sure, Mom, I agree, stepping forward to meet her and squeeze her with all four of my arms. I hope you didn't miss me too much. No more than during our 12 years in prison, she smirks. Speaking of prison and your new species, by the way, we think to kill from above is home and we absolutely want to see his reaction to all this. If I could still raise an eyebrow at that, I would. I make the Athanatos expression for mild bewilderment instead, not that Sano understands it. Is that it? Just a hug and now we're off to amuse ourselves at To Kill's expense? She's certainly not as clingy as she was when I left. And what's with the strange feeling of familiarity she has for To Kill? I am curious to see which way that will go, I admit. Have you and To Kill been hanging out or something? Not really, but I find him affable enough, Sano shrugs. He's great friends with Ixcorio, though, and even Nyx isn't too intimidated by him, so he's one of the rare individuals we all get along with. He doesn't even find us ugly the way everyone else does, or at least no more than every other one of us squishy humans. Pleasant fellow all around, and extremely amusing to tease. We got to know each other when we fixed his arms. Ah, right, the arms I cut off. I suppose it makes sense that Altrix could regrow them with her talent. While limb regeneration is a very involved, careful, and knowledge-intensive process for humans, To Kill's superior biology means that he was going to regrow his arms over time regardless. Altrix merely sped up the process drastically, since that's what her talent does, but exactly how her talent gets around the normal limits to regenerative speed and matter reconfiguration are still beyond me. Talents are so absurd. The way Liriope custom crafts the souls of its people prevents them from occurring there, which I suppose is both a curse and a blessing. To Kill's home is the same as every other residential building in the area, since he designed most of them. Which makes perfect sense, as being a soldier does not restrict his requisite information to raw combat. If anything, that's where our soldiers are weakest. Their true power comes from coordination and sapper training, giving them the capacity to rapidly set up defensive encampments from which they can expand, bit by bit, as they swarm out and take ground. Building structures is an important part of their MO, and To Kill has clearly done a good job designing my town. It is worthy of praise. I feel him busy working on something in his home, cooking, I think, and note with amusement that he doesn't live alone. I don't recognize the two humans he lives with, though I suspect they were among the many people who followed me out of sight for. He could have easily made a home for himself, but workers and soldiers are communal, social, and generally used to living in confined spaces with one another. His roommates seem to regard him fondly, at least, which I find satisfactory. A child of Liriope being alone and away from home for so long. To Kill from above is doubtlessly much stronger and much more trauma-scarred than I ever used to give him credit for. I walk up to his front door and knock, Sano being wise enough to not think she has to point out which home is his. Coming. A muffled voice calls from inside, and one of the roommates answers the door, a human male. He freezes when the door opens, blinking owlishly down at me. I should probably make sure my next body is taller. Are you, here for To Kill? He asks, since living with a giant bug person has at least managed to inure him to us a bit. What tipped you off? I ask blithely, tilting my head in mock confusion. Come on in. 2 visitors for you, To Kill. Tell them I am currently optimizing the taste of this morning's sustenance, and I would be pleased if they were to partake. The soldier calls back. You're invited to breakfast, the human needlessly translates. Thank you, I answer in the language of Liriope, and repress a laugh as I hear To Kill drop something with a clatter and rush into the room. He stares at me in utter astonishment, though it quickly changes to glorious, grateful rapture. He stands up straight and emotes unending loyalty with his eyes. Princess Malrosa, he greets me, voice cracking ever so slightly. Were he human, he'd be sobbing with joy. I am at your command. I'm not surprised he recognizes me. I am a princess, after all, and every man knows his rulers. You have done well to survive alone, to kill from above, I tell him, again in our language. And you have done well building such a suitable base of operations. Your faith in Liriope has been answered. Will we be purging the savages? He asks, not a hint of hesitation in his voice despite the trickle of fear in his soul. He likes this town, he has grown to like its people, but his loyalty to me far outweighs it. Truly an exemplar of a soldier. Thankfully, he will not need to prove it. Not these ones, I assure him. We will be allying with the people here to conquer the island in Liriope's name. For now, continue your normal routine. I would, after all, like to eat the breakfast you invited me to. Yes, War Princess. Ha! How bold of him. War Princesses isn't a real title, but it is something I've been colloquially called, due to all my training with Queen Nagatilka. Though in this context, it's less a nickname and more a logical extrapolation of what I should be called. I'm not a queen, so I can't be a war queen, yet I'm clearly the war queen in charge here. So, War Princess. Still, I shouldn't let his informality become a habit. And I need to clue him in on what's going on. To kill? I say innocently, letting a smile creep into my eyes. Your deeds here are worthy of praise, so I will allow you to keep the arms my second mother has helped you regrow. That finally gets a reaction out of him. Confusion, horror. Does he think Malrosa is dead? Yet at the end of it, he just nods. A human expression, how funny. So, you have shed your skin to become a Thanatos in truth, To Kill surmises. We are one, I reassure him. Your fractured loyalties have combined within me. Our paths are clear, now. He relaxes at that, and nods again. He probably would have obeyed me even if there was nothing of Malrosa left, just for having this body, but now he doesn't even have a shred of doubt about doing it. He called Vito a Thanatos of skin, after all. Both parts of me were destined to be queens. My new form only makes right what had once been confusingly wrong. I await your orders, Princess Malrosa. They will arrive soon, To Kill from above. He stiffens with respect again, then returns to the kitchen to finish the meal, redoubling his efforts at perfecting it now that he knows he'll be serving a queen. I like that, unlike a human thrust suddenly out of a casual situation into an unexpectedly formal one, he is not disturbed in the slightest. He's pleased. It's little differences like that which make me prefer my new species to my old one so much. The humans in the room stare at us, a bit confused and slightly worried about the long conversation that just conspicuously occurred in a language they don't understand, but I just chuckle and shrug. Don't gimme that, I say. We're just catching up. Dude's been away from home for a long time. I figured he'd like a conversation in his native language. V2 is, apparently, last night's Hyvarok invasion in full, Sano explains to the human that answered the door and his girlfriend, I think, who recently emerged to greet us. Wait, Vita? The human woman gapes. Princess Vita, I correct. It's irritating that I have to keep doing that, but I can hardly expect humans to know if I don't tell them. Mom gave birth to me so she can drop the title. Neither of you are so lucky. For a certain definition of lucky, Sano mutters. I snort with amusement. Anyway, I ended the war between Verdantop and what you call Hyvarok, so, you're welcome, I inform them. Though I suppose we're also starting a war with Vulca since they probably won't let me send island resources back up to Liriope, but, you know, that'll be way easier. Wait, did we end the war with Hyvarok? The man gulps awkwardly. Or did we just get drafted to their side? Huh? I mean, I guess you guys kinda got drafted to our side, sure, I concede. I don't think it's a good idea to present the situation that way, though. People might not like it. Yeah, the man agrees lamely. Breakfast is soon served, and it's delicious. I make sure I don't miss a single crumb before excusing myself. I'm still making the rounds, after all, and there are a lot of important people I still need to go see. Some of the most important people, even, but they've been asleep until pretty recently. Only now do I finally have my chance. As more proof that To Kill knows how to design a damn encampment, my human family's home is not in the residential area proper, but rather a complex in the center of the city next to where all the souls of people to revive are kept. Which is to say, the most important things are all in the most well-defended area of town, exactly how I like it. Ronnie, Basra, Katie, Norman, Raphael, Jari, Diddle, Sonia, Jared, Larkin, and Sylvie. I remember their names now, and always will. They live right next to where we house Angeline's soul, alongside Lynn and Rowan. I really want to go scoop them all up into a huge hug, but unfortunately they're slow to rise, slow to eat, and not entirely awake. That's okay, though. The other people I need to see are next door. Vitamin lives with the rest of my family too, but she doesn't sleep, so she seems to have spent the night with Theodora, who also lives next to the Soul Repository for ease of access. The two of them are chatting in Theodora's living room alongside Nugas, while Kiero the Cunning, of all people, guards Cassia the Maelstrom, who is locked up in the basement. Ketivan the World Shaker tends to stay outside of town, for obvious reasons, so she isn't around. Not that I feel any real need to go talk to her. Sano and I parted ways after another hug, so I knock on the door to this house alone. A cheerful "I'll get it" from Vitamin rings out through the house, and I hear her little feet pitter-patter up to the front door and open it. Her dry, gaunt flesh is starting to decompose despite everyone's best efforts, putting a bit of a macabre edge to her grin. I don't care, though. She's beautiful no matter what. "Hey, Vitamin," I greet her, opening up my arms for a hug. "Mom's home." It only takes a moment for recognition to set in before Vitamin squeals and leaps into my arms. I catch her and give her a spin, nuzzling my face into her hair, but not too hard, since it might all just fall out. I let myself into the house as Theodora also rushes towards us, a complicated expression twisting her partially boned face at the sight of me. "Vita," she greets me breathlessly. Literally breathlessly, she's using magic to talk. Her lungs must have degraded out of usability, or perhaps her vocal cords. "Hello, Theodora," I greet her. "Have you been doing well?" She looks me up and down, considering her answer as I lift Vitamin to my shoulders and let her happily kick her feet against my dragon-scale mail. "Is he in there?" Theodora asks, which surprises me. My revenants are under no compulsions to answer questions I ask unless I order them to, but their instinctive loyalty makes it uncommon for them to change the subject on me like that. I have to remember that they're not like workers and soldiers, not really. Their reverence is much less cultural and much more personal. And Melik is a big personal issue for Theodora. I see no reason to tell her anything but the full truth, though. Only as memories, I admit. We were the same person for a while, and I could replicate a convincing facsimile. I could tell you what Melik would have done, what he would have said. That much of him is still within me, but it's distinct. Static. He is with me to some extent, but he no longer grows, learns, or lives. I am sorry. And oh, he would ache seeing Theodora's response. The grief is palpable within her, and even worse is how hard she has to fight to hold on to it. Though I suppose he'd appreciate that she does. I keep going back to the same thought, Theodora says quietly. The fact that he's part of you. It makes me so happy. I hate that. It's not what he would want. It's not what either of us wanted, I agree. I never wanted to take his body, let alone kill him over it. It was a death during a war. But it was as much of an accident as a death during a war can be, I suppose. She nods solemnly. Thank you for telling me. Of course, I assure her. I wish the two of you could have spoken again. He thought so highly of you, Theodora. You were almost like a second mother to him. A wan smile lifts the half of her face that still has lips. That doesn't sound like something he'd say out loud, she comments. Oh, no, never out loud, I agree. Out loud he said you couldn't possibly be Theodora at all, but you know how Templars can be. Theodora just nods at that. Well, perhaps he's right. After all, it's good to see you, Vita. Her smile opens up wider, the genuine nature of it smiling through. Despite everything, it's good to see you. Were Melik still alive, he'd have surely screamed. I know, I say instead. I'm working on that. We don't want you to, Theodora protests. You'll want it if she wants you to want it, Nugas chirps from the other room. So what does it matter? Enjoy the ride for as long as it goes, then enjoy stretching your legs if you manage to get off. Oh, please, Theodora calls back. If Lady Vesuvius had let you enjoy a ride, I'm sure you'd have already talked me to a second death over it. Theodora, please. There's no need to be crass. Nugas gasps, sounding scandalized. Besides, you know full well that when Lady Vesuvius is involved, I always get off. Fuck, I walked right into that one. Theodora groans, eliciting a loud set of gleeful cackles that I never expected to hear from a replica of my old voice box. You set me up. Damn it. What are they even talking about? I ask Vitamin. It's gross, she answers. Don't worry about it. Fair enough, I guess I won't. Are you two making sex jokes without me? Kiro shouts from below. Ooh, now I get it. Ew. Speaking of Kiro though, I should probably continue ignoring him since I don't like him and pay attention to the prisoner he's guarding instead. The red, tumor-like growth in Cassia's soul has been expertly cut out thanks to Theodora's skill, though feeling out her opinions on ours indicates that there's still some lingering attachment that she may not even be consciously aware of. I suspect you're keeping Cassia here for long-term decontamination, then? I ask. Theodora immediately stops throwing insults at Kiro and turns to me with a serious nod. Yes, she's been infected for too long. Her brain chemistry had started changing to positively associate ours even though she still claims to hate him, so I'll have to monitor her to prevent that loyalty from partially or even fully reforming in her soul. I nod. That makes sense, and it gives me a good excuse to not go extend my ultimatum to Cassia. We're obviously not letting her go free if she intends to fight us, after all, but I don't really want to deal with it before I get to go see my family and unwind a little while. And speaking of, they're all finally awake, which means. Velp, time to go see Grandpa, Vitamin. I announce, jostling her on my shoulders. I'll leave you to your work and drop by later, okay Theodora? Sounds good, Theodora nods. It was wonderful to see you again, Princess Vita, Nugas primly chirps. You are as delightfully disturbing as always, Nugas, I answer. Thank you very much, Princess Vita. Man, that little freak is actually growing on me. I'm not sure how to feel about that, so I depart without thinking any more on the subject, heading next door to finally see my family again after so long. Like, holy shit, I only got to see them one time after getting out of prison. One time. They only moved out here after I died and ended up royalty. Hey, oh man, I can't wait to feel the delicious dumbfounded shock in their souls. It's going to be so great. I knock on the door and little Sylvie comes to answer it, one of our youngest. She stares up at me, her eyes going wide as I slowly, carefully open my mandibles like I'm about to gobble her up. Or, she whines, seeming disappointed. Mom said you were going to be fuzzy. I clap my mandibles shut again. What? I am fuzzy, I protest. I just have armor on. Well, take it off, then. She petulantly insists. Sylvie, please invite your sister inside before ordering her to strip. Rowan calls out, stepping into view, a cheeky grin on his face. We lock eyes and I just about collapse with relief. He looks relaxed, comfortable and happy in a way I've never seen in my entire life. I step inside my house, closing the door behind him, and bask in the rainbow beauty of his soul. Hey Vita, he greets me with a nod. Hey Dad, I manage to greet him back, and he beams with joy. Hey, weirdo, Basra greets me as well, sticking her head out from behind a corner. Catch. With a slow lobbed underhand, she sends something dark and round spinning my way, which I carefully and lovingly take from the air and cradle in my arms. Roscoe. It's Roscoe. They kept him safe for me. I let Vitamin down from my shoulders with two arms as I cradle Roscoe with my other two, taking in every extra pair of eyes that start peeking into the front hall from around various corners. You see, Malrosa? This is our other family. Younger, bigger, and every bit as beautiful. The first people to believe in me. To support me unconditionally. We wouldn't even be half as well adjusted as we are without them, and isn't that a scary thought? I hope Telanica will grow to love them just as much as I do. Welcome home, Rowan says, his grin still sticking firmly to his face. Wanna come sit down and tell us what happened? We have a couch now. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'd like that. He leads me into a well-used living room, full of toys and worn furniture and an impressive amount of wear and tear for a place that's only been lived in for a few months. I suppose having a family in the double digits will do that to a house. I'm the only person that lives in my home on Liriope, the servants just maintain the place. I gratefully collapse onto the couch and start telekinetically undoing my armor since my arms are occupied with Roscoe, and just, fuck. I'm home. I'm safe, I don't need the armor for once. It feels great letting it peel off, surrounded by people yet not feeling the usual motes of paranoia I'm used to when publicly underdressed. Sylvie squeals with delight the moment my chest armor is off and the true degree of my fluficity is revealed. I instruct her to be careful with it since it's sensitive and teach her the correct way to stroke it, running her fingers from top to bottom like how Tala and I often do for each other. Her squishy human fingers feel quite different from the hard claws and pads of a Thanatos' hands, but not in a bad way, and before long I have a collection of various siblings clambering onto the couch and petting my chest, arms, legs, wings, head. It's a bit overwhelming, actually, even in my dulled sensory state, but overall it's quite delightful. Sure, they're crawling all over me like I'm some kind of big, domesticated pack animal or something, but being groomed by a half-dozen different people I love and care about still puts me in a nearly thoughtless state of calm, able to just enjoy being here. We chatter, we laugh, I tell my story of becoming a Templar and then a princess. I regretfully inform them that no, they are not also princesses, or princes, for that matter. Princes? What a silly concept, but they're just about the next best thing. It's just wonderful. Indescribably wonderful. This feeling is why I'm here. This feeling is what I have to protect. For every part of this island that I hate, there is a moment of love and joy and beauty that makes it all worthwhile. But we shouldn't have to put up with the wretched bits to get to these moments, should we? That's not a necessary part of the world. I'll drive the evil and cruelty away, so that every good family like mine can live like this forever. Unfortunately, however, I haven't accomplished that yet, so this amazing time doesn't last forever. Many hours pass, lunch comes and goes, and it's nearly time for dinner before it all finally ends, but the end is indeed arriving. Penelope approaches our door, and I know I'm going to have to talk with her about the future before we can start making my dreams into reality. She knocks on the door, and with a great and mighty exertion of will, I stand up. That's for me, I think, I tell everyone. It's been wonderful seeing you all. I'll be back later, if that's okay? Okay? Rowan parrots incredulously. Vita, there's been a room waiting for you since we built this house. You don't need permission to come home. I pull him into a two-armed hug, since my other two arms are still cradling Roscoe. I have not let him go since I got here. I'll see you tonight then, I promise, and head for the door. Penelope waits on the other side, determined and chained and uncharacteristically anxious, despite her active efforts not to be. I open the door for her, and give her a smile with my eyes that she somehow already understands. I love her so much, and even after everything she's been through she hasn't forgotten me. So, she says, what's your plan for things, after we've gotten it all sorted out? I step outside, closing the door behind me. I still have my armor off, and I'm still hugging Roscoe, but I see no reason we can't decide the fate of the world like this. No matter what we do, I tell her, there will be countless people who want to stop us. We'll have to kill them to take control of the island. Almost certainly, yes, Penelope confirms. It's regrettable, but inevitable. Do you have any problem with such people ultimately forming the bulk of our workforce? I ask her. She narrows her eyes a bit at that. You're suggesting that everyone who is killed in the inevitable conflicts between opposing sides be turned into a revenant to serve the ideology they were previously opposing, Penelope summarizes. Since you assume this will be effective at establishing a sufficient workforce, you also presuppose that the conflicts will be exceptionally bloody, possibly to the point that there will be more deaths than survivors. There will be more people that oppose us than support us, don't you think? I ask. That is, in fact, the problem here, yes, Penelope says flatly. I tilt my head to show confusion. You'll have to elaborate, I'm afraid. She sighs. Walk with me, Vita, she requests, turning to head out. Let's have a talk about morality and ethics. I'm not particularly well versed on the differences, I admit, falling in step beside her. And I am not particularly surprised to hear that, Penelope answers dryly. Enough people use them interchangeably that I've seen professional philosophers not bother to differentiate the two, but I personally find their separation immensely helpful. To drastically oversimplify, ethics are external, formalized systems of right and wrong, while morals are internal, usually subjective ones. For example, before someone receives a biomancy license, they must swear to a code of ethics which dictates acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Oh, you mean like don't modify other people's bodies without their consent, for example, I jab at her, grinning with my eyes. Exactly, Penelope answers without a hint of humor. When I did that, I violated a code of ethics I had sworn myself to, because my personal beliefs, my morals, did not match them. I did not personally believe it was amoral to help someone using methods they were not privy to. Though ironically, I still ended up feeling guilty because if my past self had any sort of moral principle, it was the moral principle to follow ethical principles. This distinction has been a key conflict throughout my entire life, but I digress. The point is, I have always noticed that your moral principles tend towards the tribalistic. You are generous and loving with people that are part of your group, yet ruthless and unforgiving against anyone that opposes you. Meanwhile, you do not follow a particular set of ethics at all, unless you've picked one up during your tenure in Liriope. I'm impressed how well she pronounced that on the first try, but I suppose I shouldn't be. I can't really disagree with your assessment, I admit. People who try to kill me or those I care about are synonymous with bad people to me, and beating up bad people is okay, and I think that's eminently reasonable. I thought as much, Penelope sighs. And that is the problem. I cannot be tribalistic, Vita. I must codify principles and follow them exactly, especially in times of war and conflict. And these principles cannot discriminate. People will not be judged based on what side of the war they were on, nor on their personal beliefs, nor on how they desire to be happy. They will only be judged on whether their actions bring harm to others. I don't see that as much of a restriction, to be honest. When I walk into Skyhope and publicly declare myself the immortal ruler of Verdantop, I assure you that we will have no shortage of people rushing to do harm in my general direction. I agree, Penelope nods. Which is why I cannot allow you to simply walk into Skyhope and publicly declare yourself the immortal ruler of Verdantop. We must minimize harm, including anticipated harm others cause as a result of our actions. Well, that's going to make it pretty damn hard to plan a war, don't you think? She snorts with dry amusement. I do, indeed, have a similar thought from time to time. I nod at that, trying to think over the problem in my head. Penelope wants to make everyone immortal, but that won't work for a bunch of reasons. If people stop dying entirely, the Mistwatcher will kill us all, I inform her simply. Total population equality isn't possible because total population immortality isn't possible. The souls have to keep flowing, and sapients are Big Brother's preferred livestock. Penelope stiffens, gritting her teeth as her scales start to tinge a deep red. She's furious, but she takes the emotion and shoves it screaming into an overstuffed cage. You're certain of this? She hisses. It's unfortunately pretty well documented, I confirm sadly. Liriope has survived for thousands of years and seen plenty of other civilizations figure out immortality. What's the ratio? Significant supermajority, I answer glumly. Liriope won't let the population of immortals exceed 2%, and we try to stay nowhere near that. Though if you want to risk the island, there are records of 90% immortal populations surviving for hundreds of years, and a 70% immortal population lasting over 1,000. Those are outliers, though. It's usually way less than that. What makes you think these other cultures weren't simply causing a perception event due to other factors and blaming it on the immortal population? Penelope asks. Because when you gather too much metal, the perception event is localized to the source of the metal. When wars get too big, the perception event is localized to the sites of the battles. When you fly at the wrong time, the perception event is localized to whatever is dumb enough to fly when the mists are down. But if a society starts to not die anymore, well... Total reset, Penelope hisses. You're saying it will destroy the entire island? Exactly, I confirm. That's where the shattered stones come from, and all the other destroyed islands. Immortality is possible, Penelope, but you can't give it to everyone. Attempting to do so will kill everyone instead. Penelope's scales shift from red to black, which I assume is related to how her soul went from anger to raw, unbridled hatred at the world itself. Do undead count as immortals? She asks first. Are we already at risk? There is no chance we are currently at risk because nobody starts counting as immortal until the soul supply suspiciously slows for at least a century or two, I assure her. Only then does Misty care. If we make 1 million people immortal but increase the mortal population by a proportional amount somehow, we're fine, though I don't know if we'd all fit on the island in that particular example. As for undead, a few other empires confirm that dregs and risen do not count as immortal people. Revenants, however, are a messier issue. I'm apparently somewhat unique in my ability to make revenants that don't have to constantly kill things to stay sane, so we're riding a strange grey area. Were you seriously planning to form the bulk of our workforce around a strange grey area? Penelope asks incredulously. Of course not, I dismiss. I was planning on letting them naturally degrade and die. Or just ordering them all to kill themselves after being a revenant for a certain amount of time, whichever one ends up more efficient. Penelope swallows, leveling a calculating gaze at me. But you said these undead would be formed from our opposition, she presses. Eventually, after we are in control for long enough to have formalized an island-wide culture, we should have less opposition than we have support. It's not a long-term tenable strategy. Which is why we change it once we're in charge, I answer, shrugging. We have a mortal population and an immortal population. Both live in the lap of luxury while alive, but the mortals are raised to understand that, when they die, they will become revenants in service to Verdantop. These revenants will do the majority of the work needed to maintain society, including commanding the mindless undead that will necessarily round out the mundane physical labor sectors. Then they will eventually die, feeding the Mistwatcher and perpetuating the island's existence. You're going to make everyone into revenants? Penelope asks. That's insane. Why would you do that? Why bother putting all that animancy into the equation rather than just using the necessarily mortal population to maintain society normally? Because revenants like doing what they're told. I remind her. The fundamental problem with a world where everyone is equal is the reality that someone always has to clean the sewer. There are too many things a society needs done, too many things that take experience and training to do, to create any sort of work equality. Someone will inevitably be stuck with literally cleaning shit. And living people fucking hate that, but revenants don't. They're happy. So if being turned into one is voluntary anyway, doesn't that make it the most ethical option? But why would? Oh, Watcher, of course. Those who do not volunteer to perpetuate luxury will not have earned luxury. That is fair. As long as we allow for those who prefer to work while alive than dead, No, wait. It doesn't account for how we decide who is and isn't immortal. It'd be a merit system, I imagine. Those who have gone above and beyond to prove themselves to us. It is a terrible idea for you and I to be in charge, Vita, Penelope warns. Shame that it's non-negotiable, then, I fire back. Besides, I'll need a woman of principle to keep me in check, don't you think? She's quiet for a long time, the terrifying machine of her soul churning and grinding away at itself. How long until it's too worn out to hold together, I wonder. Well, Penelope says softly. I suppose either way we will need to actually win the war first. You've given me much to think about, but our focus for now needs to be ours. Exposing and defeating him before a majority of the population is converted to his side will aid us immensely in gaining the popular opinion necessary to minimize public outcry when we oust Templar command. And also it has the advantage of preventing a megalomaniacal madman from mind-controlling the entire populace. As opposed to megalomaniacal madwomen? A voice behind us asks. I turn and nod. Well, the goal is to not end up megalomaniacal, but I guess to an extent, yeah. Hello, Lark. The Vrathitso is glowering at us, clearly unhappy with what she's heard. You can't seriously be considering her plan, Lady Vesuvius, Lark protests. I seriously consider all potentially workable plans, Penelope counters. And I must do so, because my plan is apparently impossible due to a belligerent, gluttonous god. But Lady Vesuvius, Lark begins, but I don't listen to her. I'm too busy turning and rushing towards a soul that just suddenly blipped into my sensory range via teleportation. It's someone I don't recognize, and they're a splice. We have contact. I shout back at Penelope, and then I feel a half-dozen people die. I snarl and teleport back to my house to grab my armor, yanking it from the couch and casting spells to quickly wrap it over my body. Rowan and 3 of my siblings are still there in the living room, staring at me in surprise. "Take care of Roscoe," I order them, handing him to Rowan. "What's going on?" he demands. "What else?" I grumble. "The war has started." I really want to rush over to where some dumbfuck splice thinks they can mess with my town and relish in the resulting slaughter, but unfortunately I am fighting an opponent with teleportation abilities in a defensive battle. I can't risk fighting like a soldier. It is my duty to fight as a queen. Pulling a huge shard of my soul free for use, I stuff it with as much of my mana as I can pack in and put it into a nearby toy, grabbing it and handing it to Rowan. "Mana sight on," I order him. "If you see any suspicious fluctuations, smash this to destroy them. You have to be quick. Teleporting enemies. I'll come aid you the moment you do." "Okay," my father answers, knowing better than to argue. "Good luck, Vita. The range for disruption is short, so gather everyone together," I tell him. "Stay safe. Love you all." And with that, I walk out the door and go next door. Because, unfortunately, I have to stay here at the midpoint between the Soul Repository, my family's house, and Theodora's house, since they are the 3 most important strategic assets we currently possess and the enemy can teleport, or at least has access to someone who can teleport them. It would therefore be foolish to assume this is the only enemy we're about to face. I focus on my soul sense, my eyes twitching with fury as I feel a 7th person die before Lark finally bursts onto the scene and rips the splice's throat out. Which I was not expecting her to do. The splice was definitely human-shaped, but, well, so are the corpses around it, I suppose. It was no one I know, but perhaps the same can't be said for her. The splice, likewise, isn't anyone I know either. It seems to be made of 2 different souls, but not half of each soul. 2 near-full spheres are fused together instead, overlapping in the middle where they melt together and pulse with obvious mental domination. A sad victim sent on a suicide attack against us. But why now? I don't have time to think too deeply about it, because as I feared 2 more splices suddenly appear in a different part of town, splitting up and starting to wreak havoc immediately. Time to manage a crisis. We are under attack. I use a spell to announce, blaring the words across the entire town. "Everyone please get yourselves to safety. Group up with someone combat capable, if you are able, and do not panic." At the exact same time, I also use a separate spell to send a message directly into Lark's ear. "Starboard, 2-second run. Use your max speed, ignore building collateral." She fires off faster than an arrow, intercepting the attackers. Good. My next message is sent to Yelisaveta. "I'm not familiar with the town's current layout. I need you to list areas of importance and describe the soul of the person standing nearest to them." Now she's stunned and terrified, but only for a moment before pushing it aside and beginning to talk. "Lada. Red soul, smells of flowers and honey. Chitin farm. Gray and black soul, tastes like fruit." "What?" "Flowers and..." "Oh, I found it." Jalisa's descriptions are a bit off from my own, but I managed to find what she's indicating well enough. I know she can't see anybody's soul from inside her house, but I correctly guessed she still more or less knows where everyone is thanks to her absurd sensory suite and would know their soul descriptions as a matter of simple memorization. I'm not disappointed with the results. Now to start allocating assets. Remaining in the center of town, I send magical messages to Kill, Aldrix, Bentley, Xena, Kiro, Ketavan, and so many more, spreading them out around the town to be able to intercept our enemies and protect anything of value. The next enemy to get teleported in isn't a splice, merely a person with one of the red, pulsing Ars loyalty soul tumors. They still have a powerful talent of some sort, though, destroying a pair of buildings before Xena rips their blood out of their body and leaves them dead in the street. This isn't sustainable. Even if we kill these people seconds after they arrive, that's enough time for them to do significant damage. Teleportation makes defensive wars too untenable. Thankfully, Penelope is already flying up into the sky to try and find our enemy's base of operations. Please tell me you see something, I sent her. This situation does not permit me to lie, she answers, my remote listening spell easily picking up on it. We know they're at least multiple miles away, given you can't feel them with your senses. I am scanning the area as best I can. Damn it, I want to go out there and do something, but I have to stay here to defend. This is so frustrating. How are we fighting a teleporter that can send people this far, this accurately, and even more startlingly, knows where we are in the first place? We're in a random ass spot in the middle of the forest. How could? Wait. No. Progenitor, damn it. He has capita, I hiss at Penelope. He has too. I concur, she grunts back. I am at fault for this. I'd considered binding them to a contingency that would automatically kill them without maintenance from myself, but I'd thought them under my control. Their survival is a consequence of that. I'd thought they were hiding from Mars specifically, however. I am frustrated that they managed to fall victim to him regardless. Worse, Capita is both a victim and pregnant. I cannot kill her outside of extreme circumstances. I'll do it for you, I offer. No, Penelope says firmly. You will not. Well, there goes the easy option then. I let out an annoyed huff from my breathing vents, casting a few quick spells to send more updates and orders to my soldiers. There are enchantments I can set up to make teleportation untenable, ripping apart anyone who tries to transpose themselves into the area, but I certainly can't do that while we're under attack. We need to deal with the immediate problem first, find where our enemies are and disable them. A warping of mana nearby indicates something is teleporting into my range. Finally, I step closer and immediately yank out the soul of the man that teleports in before he can so much as twitch a finger. Stuffing it with a soul shard, I stick his soul back into his body before grabbing him by the collar. Truthfully answer any questions asked of you, I order, and then I toss him 100 feet into the air. Penelope doesn't need my instruction to catch the man and start interrogating him, narrowing down the general direction of the enemy camp enough for her to spot it. She gives me a direction and rockets off towards it, while I remain where I am, my arms impatiently crossed. Less than a minute later, the teleportation assault ends. 12 of my people are dead. No one I care about personally, but they're still mine. As soon as I feel Penelope flying back to us, I rush off to collect their souls. Dying for me will not be a permanent state of affairs. These people have earned better. Though I suppose, from their perspective, they haven't died for me. They just died. Most of them weren't warriors, they were just people that decided living here was smarter than trying to go back to Skyhope, people that threw their lot in me not out of loyalty, but desperation. Still, though, I can respect desperation. Their actions make them mine, even if they may personally want nothing to do with me. What can I say? I'm possessive. It's something Vita and Malrosa both shared, to some extent. Neither of us are good at caring about people outside our circle, either, but I understand that I have to at least act like I care if I expect to be even a halfway decent ruler. And since being a ruler is what I have to be, I need to get good at it. Empathy is difficult for me, but taking care of what's mine? Ensuring that my things don't get messed with by anyone? That everything is taken care of, protected, safe, fed, happy? That meshes with me. It's not perfect, but I can work with that. My people will get the best because they are mine. And those who dare attack what's mine will be slaughtered to the last. Penelope flies back soon enough, my revenant in one hand and 2 living people wrapped up in her tail. Now that I'm paying attention, all 3 of them have dark skin and white hair, like Orville does. Sigurden? I prompt as Penelope floats down next to me. Baldanese, actually, Penelope corrects. At least, judging by their accent. Huh? Verdantop is home to 3 countries, Vulca, Sigulda, and Baldone. Sigulda and Baldone were both native to Verdantop before Vulca crashed in and took over, but other than that I don't really know much of anything about them. I think Baldone was super isolationist, or something? So normally it'd be weird to see them mounting an offensive, but the red, pulsing pustules in their souls make it pretty obvious who the true culprit is. So is that where we think ours is? I ask. Baldone? So far as I'm able to determine, that seems likely, Penelope confirms. But I'd like to ask them again, with you acting as a lie detector. Easy enough, I agree, shooting tentacles forwards, only to have them be smacked away by Penelope's wings. "I do not mean kill them, you incorrigible woman," she snaps, and I feel an instinct to frown since that's not at all how she used to call me incorrigible. They are victims. Just look into their souls and determine if they are lying for me. "Oh." I nod, and she starts jabbering at them in a language I don't recognize. They babble something back, and occasionally I mention when I'm seeing less than honest intentions. I'm surprised that they're willing to dish information to us at all, but I guess the animancy-infused loyalty to ours doesn't quite overcome the terror of a 7.5-foot-tall dragon woman descending on your war camp and dismantling it single-handedly. That and the fact that Penelope is unraveling the soul tumors in all three of them as the conversation continues. All three of them meaning she's also messing with my revenant's soul, but since it's Penelope I let her. "Okay," Penelope sighs. "So here's what we know. Capita, along with a force of people from Baldone, set up camp at the edge of Capita's teleportation range and assaulted us, intending to disrupt our operations and, ideally, free and reinfect Cassia the Maelstrom. The moment I spotted their camp and started moving towards them, Capita fled with a handful of their officers, leaving the rest of their assault group behind. I killed a few of them in battle before kidnapping these two, who have confirmed that, to the best of their knowledge, Ars Rania is in the nation of Baldone, where he is now their beloved supreme ruler. As one tends to be, after developing a contagious magical loyalty plague," I comment. "As one tends to be," Penelope agrees dryly. "Anyway, this is our first actionable intel on Ars' location, and since our ideal win condition involves getting you in range to destroy his soul, I think we have to act on it. Unfortunately, we also can't act on it, because we have a local Capita problem." "Nah, I can fix that," I assure her. "Give me a day or so and enough metal and I can set up an anti-teleportation ward around the city. Anyone who tries to port here will find it extra difficult, and if they push through anyway they'll find themselves successfully teleporting their own body into chunky pieces throughout the entire city. That should get them to stop." The scaled ridges which now act as Penelope's eyebrows raise in surprise. "That's an interesting spell. I can disrupt teleportation in a confined area, but to sustainably protect the entire town?" I shrug. "It's high-level spatial magic, but it's pretty essential spatial magic once you get to be as advanced a civilization as Liriope. Once everybody learns to teleport, defending against teleportation is extremely important for all the reasons we saw today. I'll also need to make a shunt that redirects teleported inorganic matter out of the city entirely, so they don't just swap to sending payloads of deadly airborne material. Liriope, ironically, doesn't use anti-teleportation fields, because the general opinion of the nation is that if anyone wants to teleport unannounced into a city full of immortal, superpowered, xenophobic spellcasters, they're damn well encouraged to take their best shot and rid the world of their stupidity. And because teleporting around the city is convenient, so nobody really wants to take away that option. But the just try it thing also factors in. "How much metal do you need?" Penelope asks, and she doesn't like the answer I give her one bit. Which is fair. There's a lot less metal on Verdantop than there is in Liriope, especially after Sky went and let the Mistwatcher eat most of it, the bastard. Still, Penelope agrees to supply me what I need, because we both know we don't really have a choice, and I get to work the moment I have my first set of materials. It's not a difficult job. A lot of this stuff I was born knowing. I came out of my mother's womb, third favorite mom, specifically Malrosa's, knowing lots of things, like what I am, what my name is, who my family is, how to weave the art, how old I should be before attempting to weave the art, and so much more. My memory core didn't just hold the memories I formed from my experiences, but also a massive well of general knowledge and culture which the progenitor helped me relearn. With animancy, it's possible to transfer memories, altering a soul directly in order to implant information. A Thanatos souls are designed to make that easier, while my soul is, unfortunately, extremely resistant to such additions. The biggest problem is how alien my soul apparently is, even to the progenitor. We worked a fair bit on mapping it out, learning how I work and what parts of me are dedicated to meshing with and controlling my mana ocean, since those are parts that are pretty essential to making me. Well, me. It doesn't escape me that the progenitor probably wants to know about how my soul works for reasons beyond helping me out, but I honestly don't have a problem with that. The progenitor isn't trying to hide the fact that she has plans for me, which adds some solid points in her favor, and even if she was hiding it, like, she's my some amount of great's grandma. I love her, she loves me, and I'm at least confident that she's confident that I won't have an issue with whatever she has in mind. I trust her. On the subject of trust and family, I regret not going to see my mom while in Liriope. It's just, I was very busy trying to ensure no one thought I was a traitor to Liriope, and going to visit a woman imprisoned for treason is a poor way to engender trust. Next Hiverock night, though, I'll go visit her. We have a very complicated relationship that doubtlessly became way more complicated when I started being Vita, but I still love her, I think. Maybe part of why I want to go see her is because I'm not sure. Thinking about it is uncomfortable, like I'm taking my current mood and shoving it face first into a spinning grindstone. For some reason, I can joke to Altrix about her being my second favorite mom, but the thought of doing the same for Queen Galrotta horrifies me. It's like, I can laugh along with Altrix because she's Vita's family, and that's how Vita treats her family. But when Queen Galrotta is involved, I'm not the goddess of blue, I'm just young little Malrosa. I feel myself get more and more stressed as I work, turning that thought around in my head. I don't like it. I'm always Vita, and always Malrosa. Anything else would just be confusing. Am I overthinking things? Thankfully, I'm saved from having to figure out an answer to that question by the approach of a familiar fucked up soul. Penelope shows up a few minutes into my efforts to secure our town against further teleportation assaults. Her scale's a beautiful mix of white and green. Just look at her. Holy shit. She towers over me, radiant and beautiful and rippling with power. She does not slouch, not even attempting to hide a single inch of her massive form. Her tail twists behind her, all muscle and tentacle and instrument of death. I want to watch her crush a man's skull with the enormous talons on her feet. I want her to stretch out her wings and break open the sky. I want her to pick me up and hold me close until the world falls away. If only the horror of her crafted soul reflected the beauty of her crafted form. Vita? She addresses me. Do you have a moment? As many moments as you need, I promise her, turning away from my work. She grunts wordlessly, eyes flicking to the metal I'm shaping and back to me. Can you work and talk? She doesn't want to delay the creation of the defenses. I guess I can't blame her. I don't want to work and talk, but I certainly can. Yeah, no problem, I say, turning back to what I was doing. So what did you want to talk about? The immortality papers you gave me, she answers. Specifically the sections on the brain being the limiting factor. Right, yeah, I nod. Most sapient brains are incredible at information storage, but even if you prevent degradation there's still an upper limit. Souls, conversely, don't have that problem. You can keep adding more and more anima to a soul and store more and more information inside it, and while there are technical limits to that there aren't practical limits, considering how little anima you need to store hundreds of years of memory. And the trick is just determining a method that allows the brain to access memories from the soul without copying those memories from the soul the way it normally would. Yes, which the Athanatos figured out. I did read the papers, Vita. I shrug awkwardly. Right, of course, I allow. So, what's the issue? It circumvents the problem with an easier solution, rather than actually tackling the brain storage problem, Penelope says. And since I dislike the idea of frequently growing new brains for myself, it's what I'd like to solve next. I would like for you to peer review my research, once I start it. I'd love to, I answer honestly. What angle were you thinking of trying to tackle things from? Your comment on having technical limits but not practical limits is of the most interest to me, Penelope says. If the information storage density is thick enough, one could hypothetically create a brain that, while technically limited in capacity, could never be filled even after, say, 10,000 years of experience. By which point a superior method will almost certainly be discovered, etc. I'm not an organic crafter, I admit, but I'd be happy to help you with that in any way I can. Thank you, she says simply, and I wish she still had the same excitement for it that she would have had before. She's still excited, still interested, but it's muted. Locked away with all of her other emotions. She's only expressing interest now because her principles still drive her to seek sustainable, wide-scale immortality. I love you so fucking much, I tell her. I wish I could say the same, she answers honestly, and it makes me wish Galdra was still around so I could kill her again. So, I say, awkwardly changing the subject, what's our plan for ours? He has a nation of fanatics, we have a village of misfits, Penelope summarizes. Conventional war is impossible and it would be counterproductive besides. Instead we want a small, quick strike force, aiming to hit him before he can relocate. We find him, we get you next to him, and then you rip his soul open and eat him alive. No principles making it difficult to assassinate the ruler of a nation, then? I prod. Corrupt leadership is to be replaced, at high priority, Penelope says as if quoting something. And ours is a criminal and villain of the highest possible measures. My principles do not merely allow ruthlessness when facing him, they demand it. I am incapable of tolerating his continued existence. But we can't kill his victims, I say. We cannot kill his victims under most circumstances, she corrects. And a stealth mission is to our benefit regardless. A small team, then, I conclude. Just you and me? I think, Penelope begins, but as I expected she's quickly cut off. Me too, Lark says, staggering towards us. Please. I turn to look at her as if I wasn't already aware she had arrived. She is actually staggering as she walks, but not due to injury. Her pupils are dilated. Her body shakes. Red blood drips down her chin. And black blood drips down her palms, where she's balled her hands into fists. She ate a human today, the first one she's had in quite a long time. Shit, but she hates how much she loved it. Lark, Penelope prompts, looking down on her with artificially constructed kindness, are you all right? I'm fine, Lark answers automatically. Let me fight him. As the current cornerstone of the town's defenses, Penelope starts, but is quickly cut off. I already failed here. Lark snaps. I'm not. She brings a hand up to her mouth and shudders. I need to get away from the town either way. I'm not safe. Let me come with you. Lark. Penelope sighs, shooting the Vrithitso a pitying look. That was a necessary kill, given the circumstances. Somewhat predictably, that doesn't make her feel better. Nothing will right now, and she has an ulterior motive for coming with us anyway. To keep an eye on us, like with the monsters she has to protect people from. Funny sentiment, from one of Nora's most murderous children. I don't have a problem with my niece coming, I say anyway. She's competent enough muscle that she'll actually matter in a fight where you and I can't cut it alone. What did you just call me? Lark squeaks. We'll want one more person, Penelope tacitly agrees. A human, one with enough semblance of subtlety and self-control to act as our liaison and information gatherer. Someone who can blend in and get along with people. So, Jaleesa? I prompt. Jaleesa would be ideal, Penelope agrees. I'd like Jaleesa to come, yeah, Lark says quietly. Fuck. Jaleesa shouts from halfway across the camp. So we have our basic strategy down, then, Penelope sighs. Vita, finish the defenses around camp and start gathering more risen to defend the borders if you have extra time. I'll start making Jaleesa's body ethnically Baldanese. You'll what? Jaleesa shrieks, exiting her house and starting to run towards us. Hey, I didn't agree to this. And Lark can modify her traps to account for her extended absence, and also take the time she needs to mentally recover. I know you can hear me. Jaleesa continues. Don't ignore me. I'm not ignoring you, I'm simply not bothering to entertain the idea that your revulsion will overcome your sense of duty, Penelope answers, not bothering to raise her voice above a normal volume. Fuck. Jaleesa shouts again. Well, sounds like we have a plan, I conclude. There's another avenue of attack I want to look into, but that should only take me an hour or two to myself. Then do it, Penelope nods. Every tool in our toolbox is important. Ours will likely prioritize running away over direct conflict, and we cannot allow that to happen. Agreed, I nod. I don't have all fucking year to kick the bastard off my island. Can we wind back a second to the part where I'm your niece? Lark asks quietly. And hey, I don't see a good reason not to explain. It'll probably help take her mind off of eating a guy. My sister created your species, I answer easily. My sister on my eldritch side, I mean. Oh, Lark says. You mean that black mana stuff you were talking about a few months ago? Yeah, that's the one, I nod. She made your kind, you're connected to her, and she's my sister, so. Niece. Well, some amount of grandniece, technically, since she didn't make you personally, but that's just details. Lark stares at me for a moment. Do you know why? She asks. So she can digest the souls you eat, I answer simply. You make her stronger. There's an intensity to her now, her focus resting entirely on me. Yet it's a fragile thing, the weight of a thin sheet of glass. Is she nice? Lark asks quietly. Oh. She's not mean, I hedge. At least not to me. But she made the Vrithit so, Lark. On purpose. She wants you to be everything you hate, little monster. Lark just nods at that, the answer painful but unsurprising. I pretty obviously fucked up with her again, and I don't know how to stop doing that. I keep thinking I can treat her like a fellow monster, but I should really be treating her like a child, huh? I don't know how to do that. We all part ways after that, Penelope flying off just in time to avoid getting yelled at by Jaleesa, who quickly realizes she probably just has to accept her fate. I spend most of the rest of the day finishing up our anti-teleportation defenses, and when I'm satisfied with my handiwork I go home, hug my family, and settle into a bed before letting my focus wander into another realm. Hey, Nora? I ask, poking my horrifyingly big sister. Vita, hello. She shapes back. It's been too long. What can I do for you? I was wondering if you had any thoughts on this. I shape my mana into a complex structure, a beating, pulsating sump of anima that's blue instead of red. The structure is copied exactly, inflated in size to make the details easier to see. I barely understand any of it, but it feels like an exploitable weakness, as well as a useful way to learn about Nora herself. I'd be worried about showing her Ars soul tumor if I wasn't confident she could easily make it on her own if she felt like it. Well now, she writes, radiating amusement. Looking to become a petty little overlord, are you? Whoa, that was a fast response. Did she figure out what this does at a glance? Nah, I answer easily. Looking to humiliate some fool who thinks he can do this on my turf. Oh, that is a much better answer, she says, laughter chiming like church bells. I'll see what I can whip up for you, dearest sister. Though I expect a good story in return. I do love immersing myself in the folly of those who stand in our way. I'll try to properly replicate his emotional resonance for you, I promise. Do you prefer the moment he loses hope and resolves to run, or the moment he realizes he is going to die? Why Vita, I do believe I love you, Nora coos. The death, please. I adore the emotions of those who feel their death scrape across their throats. It reminds me of what I'm fighting for. Of course, Nora, I tell her. Feel free to poke me whenever, but I'm afraid I can't guarantee my attention. Yes, corporeal concerns. Nora agrees easily. I do understand, dearest. Have a lovely time making an example of him. Thank you, I answer. Goodbye for now. I return to my body, taking a deep breath and letting a smile creep up my eyes. Ars teleported a bunch of assassins into the middle of a bunch of non-combatants. He is impossibly fucked up, a little bogeyman Vulca scares their children with at night. His name is synonymous with unspeakable horrors, and he's clearly playing for keeps. Unfortunately for him, that tendency runs in the family. And my unspeakable horrors are bigger than his.